Are you looking to spice up your Curse of Strahd Heart of Sorrow encounter with something a little bit different? Personally, I took a look at this encounter in the book and I thought it was a little bit lacking. The Heart of Sorrow is a really interesting set piece, and I found the actual encounter that was in the book for it was very, very lacking. So I decided to spice things up and make it a gore nest from Doom Eternal. Now, I'm quite experienced as a dungeon master nowadays, so I would like to share with you my experience of designing this encounter in the hopes that it will help you design your own. Before we begin, real quick note, spoiler warning for the Curse of Strahd module from Wizards of the Coast. Thank you very much, I'm Extra Galactic Unicorn, let's get into it. So let's talk for a minute about the Heart of Sorrow itself. The Heart of Sorrow is a magical artifact in the adventure book known as Curse of Strahd. It is held at the very top of Ravenloft Castle, Strahd's main fortress. And effectively what it does is it gives him a temporary HP bar on top of his health. I actually quite liked the idea that it made Strahd retroactively immortal, so I put that in as part of my own game. It made it a bit more of a significant thing, honestly, and you could probably take it or leave it, but I quite liked the idea of how that was structured. The actual tower itself is defended by a number of animated flying halberds, which are just reskinned flying swords. And when the players try to fight and destroy the Heart of Sorrow, then they will fly out and attack them. They will also be reinforced by a group of 4 vampire spawn, and that is effectively your encounter. Now, the problem with that is that I felt that it was quite, well, plain a little bit. Flying swords and vampire spawn are all melee creature combatants, and they don't do an awful lot of clever things other than just hit people. Vampire spawn grab people and they drain HP, but other than that, they don't really have an awful lot going for them. So the first idea that I had was to merge the Vampire Spawn stat block with a bunch of player character abilities to give them that idea that they are actually ex-adventurers. If you want to know how I created an evil goon squads for Strahd, then you can check out this video here. I set them up to be mini-bosses throughout the campaign with a bunch of fun loot for your players, and it also gave the Vampire Spawn encounters a lot more personality. You can check out that video there. But going back to the Heart of Sorrow, I felt since this location is so important for Strahd, he really wants to keep it on lockdown and defend it as best as possible. So therefore, I felt that this encounter needed a bit of spicing up. The tower itself is actually supposed to be awakened and alive. The book describes it as when the adventurers walk in, it vibrates, it reacts. And that really got me thinking. I was actually playing Doom Eternal at the time, and every single time you wander into a gore nest in Doom Eternal, you get this horrible screeching sound. Demons start popping out of the woodwork, and then you go all rip and tear on them. So I thought, why not actually take some inspiration from that? Why not actually make it like a gore nest or something like that? Pop in and teleport some defenders and have it be a really difficult encounter. It's one of Strahd's big strategic assets, so it only makes sense it's really difficult to take down. So with that in mind, I decided to recreate one of my favorite bosses from Doom Eternal, the Gladiator. So if you've never played Doom Eternal, the Gladiator is a boss which shows up roughly somewhere halfway through the game. It is a defensive powerhouse. It has a big ol' shield, which means you can't really shoot it and do an awful lot of damage, and you really need to master counterattacking in order to actually defeat the thing. A green flash will show up when it starts to attack, and that's your helpful cue to actually shoot it and maybe stun it. Otherwise, it has a number of different attacks. It uses a big old mace chain combination to actually swing around the arena and do a lot of damage. It also hits you and pushes you with its shield. It's a really fun designed enemy. And I'm more than happy to be taking stuff from video games and putting them into tabletop RPGs. I do believe that if you actually have inspiration for something, then you should try and make it and try and put it into your games. At the end of the day, if you're playing with a good bunch of gamers, they'll go and recognize that thing and go, oh, I know what that is. This is gonna be fun, because you've just done the fun thing, haven't you? And yes, you have. You've just recreated the fun thing. And that's really good. It actually kind of invests them a little bit. It makes them interested. But ultimately, just recreating a famous video game character or a famous video game boss or monster is not enough to really make things great. It'll make it good, but it won't make it great. So let's have a little look about what we can do to actually flavor this to the scenario. So here we are, this is Foundry, and this is my map for Curse of Strahd. At the very top here, we have the Heart of Sorrow. And as you can see, the challenge is ultimately getting to the Heart of Sorrow. We've got this giant spiral staircase, which goes all the way up, multiple floors, multiple feet, all the way down to the ground floor. And that is effectively a big old problem, because the players have to climb all the way up to get to their objective, all the way up on the 5th floor. So let's have a little think about how we can use this terrain. Because at the end of the day, we don't just want to be putting any old monster in here. We could put a beholder in here, and that would be a difficult fight. But the important thing when designing an encounter is to keep in mind every single element that you're putting in, and everything should ultimately work together to create a really interesting fight, an interesting encounter, because we're not just thinking about this from a tactical's perspective, we're also thinking about this from a storyteller's perspective and a director's perspective. What is going to be an interesting set piece? What is going to be thematic and look cool rather than just actually being difficult? If we wanted this to be difficult, we could just put in, like I said, like 2-3 beholders, and that is going to be a very difficult fight for people. But it might not necessarily work well with the structure. It might not necessarily be on brand. It might not necessarily be playing to the strengths of what this tower is. So let's talk a little bit then about our Gladiator. So let's put him on right away. There he is. So the Gladiator is up here. And obviously this is a big guy, so I've made him 2x2 just to give him that sort of imposing mini-boss feel. And now we need to sort of think about how he's actually going to fight. We obviously know how the Gladiator is supposed to fight in Doom Eternal. He pushes people with his shield, and he hits people with this sort of like mace, chain axe thing. So those will be his attacks. Let's think about how we can use that in this environment. The Heart of Sorrow can be approached in multiple different ways. The ground floor, where we come all the way up from the basement and we'll climb the tower. There is also a couple of entrances on the 2nd, 1st, 3rd floors, which you can use to skip a couple of feet. You can also attack on the 5th floor here. So how is our Gladiator going to be able to defend against a whole squad of players and using this terrain to his advantage? So obviously he's just gonna spawn in wherever. This is a Doom Eternal Gore Nest after all, so we can just have the Heart of Sorrow and say that it can teleport in a bunch of people when it feels threatened, and that's one of its sort of actions. After that, it's just going to sit there and it's going to let all of its defenders actually defend. When I actually played this encounter, despite the fact that the Heart of Sorrow is not really a creature, I kind of gave it an initiative counter and gave it health and AC so that people could actually target it and fight it without, actually having to deal with the encounter if they wanted to. If they were going to be smart about it, then they could just, rush the thing down and accomplish the objective and then worry about all of the other bad guys later. So the Gladiator itself, I decided that at the end of the day, it's going to have to teleport around. The players can get around this area with a bunch of different strategies. If we were attacking the Heart of Sorrow from the ground floor, well, the first thing I would do is try and fly all the way up the top. The other thing I would do is try and speed all the way up these stairs using a character who's like, tabaxi rogue build meta nonsense, which can go 200 foot around or something. Like, just run all the way up there, right? Why not? So I think the first thing I decided then was that I don't want the players to be able to skip the Gladiator. He always needs to be in the way. He is always like shield first, and you can't get away from him. So I decided to make him super annoying. I decided to allow him to teleport. Over here in the stat block it says an action. I actually had a rule, so at the very start of his turn, he would teleport to the closest person to the Heart of Sorrow and then just get in their way, basically. To try and body block them, basically. He is a defender and you're going to have to deal with him. So that is the first thing that I did. We're using the environment because at the end of the day, if we put our gladiator here and our players are here, they really can't just run past him. They can try and push past him, 100% athletics and all that, but then he will just teleport back and you've still got to deal with him again, so it kind of makes it a waste of an effort. So now, how do we actually deal with flyers? Well, I gave the gladiator 2 counters, one of which is the chain counter. The chain counter, both of these counters are reactions, and the chain counter is an attack where the gladiator just sort of throws his chained hammer at a person and he then drags that person towards them. He then pushes them 10 foot away with his shield and just bashes them, basically. The idea of this is that if you go past him, then he has reactions to just like grab you and go, no, 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 no. You are not getting away. You are coming and fighting me and nothing else. And this is admittedly, tied down to 5th edition's reaction, so he can only do this once. He can't keep the whole 6-player party all on lockdown, and I honestly wouldn't want him to be doing that. He's supposed to be getting in the way and being annoying. He's not supposed to be something that is just physically impossible to get around, right? Because I kind of feel that you could do that, but that would be kind of cheesy, and I don't think your players would like you if you did that. You ultimately want to build a challenge that the players can surmount. You don't want to build an impossible encounter, because impossible encounters are not fun. So that is how we deal with flyers. If somebody gets closer to the Heart of Sorrow and the gladiator will teleport over to them, they will chain attack them with their chain counter, and they will just sort of grab them, smack them down so that they can keep on going. The other one to talk about is the shield counter. This is another reaction where if they actually get attacked, then they'll just retaliate and they'll push people back down the stairs, basically. And we're always pushing people 10 foot with this character to try and sort of push them back and give the Heart of Sorrow as much space as possible, basically. The shield counter is also one of the sort of big attacks that the Gladiator does in Doom Eternal, so I felt that that was appropriate. The Gladiator himself has 2 attacks, and he attacks with his Warhammer. I gave him a Vicious Warhammer just to give him a little bit of extra DPS and allow a little bit of convincing loot on his corpse if the players wanted one of these. He also pushes people around with his shield, similar to other stat blocks of his type, where he basically just pushes people around and pushes them back with his bonus action. This way, he's getting the maximum amount of value out of his actions. If you're really struggling with designing a monster and trying to figure out how you can fit all of their convoluted mechanics and attacks, try to use all of the actions that 5th edition gives you. Reactions, actions, and bonus actions, use all of them. Don't just use one of them, Now, the Gladiator himself is a very annoying speed bump, but he can't really solve the entire problem. He needs a little bit of backup. He's already a pretty interesting stat block in of himself. I also made it so that he can't be frightened or charmed or anything, so you can't CC the guy. A little bit of resistance and immunities from various things, just to sort of mimic that he's, a demon and stuff like that. The next thing I decided to do is give him a little backup. Now, we can't go too crazy. The Gladiator is already a pretty strong opponent, and he's almost like our centerpiece. So we just want to give him a bunch of like helpers who can sort of do some damage and support his role. And for that, I use the gargoyles from Doom Eternal. The gargoyles are effectively imps from Doom, if you've ever sort of played Doom. For their stats, I kept things very basic. I gave them a small amount of armor class, a small amount of health, and effectively what they do is they hurl fire at people. So they just do a basic fire attack. They've got a bit of range on that, so they can sort of throw things down this big old tower. Or if the players come in from the side here, the Gladiator can take position here. The gargoyles can sort of like position around here to sort of hold this bottleneck. And that's sort of all they do, really. I didn't give them fly or anything like that. I wanted them to hang out at the very top here and use all the stairs as cover to sort of allow them to throw things down at the players and just harass them in general. And that is basically everything for the encounter. And now that everything is out, you can kind of see how I have gone about designing and building this. I have decided to take inspiration from a video game or some sort of enemy or monster. How can I actually fit this to the environment, and how can I allow them to actually achieve their goal? What exactly is their goal and objective? What are they going to do to actually support that? What are their abilities doing in order to actually allow them to achieve that goal? And how do they work within the actual environment that they're supposed to be fighting in? A monster stat block is all very well and good, but at the end of the day, the vampire spawn have spider walk. So this allows them to walk all the way up and down that tower, but that's it. They don't really have anything that will stop people attacking the Heart of Sorrow. The animated flying swords, they just fly around and attack people. And that's it. They can fly, again, which allows them to use the environment a little bit, but it doesn't actually help them achieve their objective of defending the Heart of Sorrow. And furthermore, if the tower is alive, then why is the tower itself not doing anything? Surely it's supposed to be summoning stuff. I mean, it summoned a bunch of flying swords, but you could probably argue that any old wizard can put down a flying sword. It doesn't seem all that special. So there you go. That is how I turned the Heart of Sorrow into a gore nest from Doom Eternal. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate if you made it all the way to the end. And I hope this really got you thinking about how you design your monsters and how you design your encounters, and I really hope that your own encounter is as best as it can be. If you liked and enjoyed this content, please consider giving it a like and also subscribing. I'm trying to make more of these videos so I can help more people do cooler stuff at the end of the day. So I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you wanted to watch more of my content, please feel free to click on this video here. Hopefully it will interest you. If not, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Cheerio.